Do we have our track teams? We have our track teams. Where's Okay, we're going to start with the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Hi, everyone. Our apologies for being a little late. Betty, can you please let the record note that we met an executive session to discuss matters leading to the appointment, employment, promotion, demotion, discipline, suspension, dismissal, and removal of a particular person or persons. We're going to move on to, do you want to do student recognition first? Or do you want to do the public hearing first?
So we
have to do the public hearing first? Yes?
Yes.
I'm getting
I think
the
so,
important person. Okay, so sorry to keep you all waiting but we have to do the public hearing first, which is the public hearing on our district-wide safety plan. Trustees, you were given the plan. I'm going to open it up to the public if you have any comments, and this public portion is only going to be about the district safety plan, the district-wide school safety plan. We do trustees after, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so we'll start with the public. If anyone has a comment, please come up to the mic and give us your name and town of residence. Anybody?
Okay.
Just
Yeah.
the safety plan, yes. Yes, go ahead, John.
There was a ad placed in the paper, and if anybody had any comments, contact me, and nobody did. This is the nice portion if you wanted to come after reading that and comment on it.
Okay.
Say will remain open to comments to people who want to read on the website. They want to get back to us.
Exactly. So
Right.
it'll be posted once it's adopted. It gets posted to the website. Essentially what it does is it identifies the safety team. It identifies some of the very general regulatory things that are required with regard to school safety. Each of the schools has a much more detailed safety plan that guides the practices and the protocols and the procedures that drive emergency drills and lockdowns and lockouts and evacuation drills and all that. That obviously is confidential. We don't put floor plans of the schools on the website and all that. So the safety plan that we have tonight, and I have it with me, is an exercise in compliance related to the regulations of the law. Okay, but it has to be done every year. Okay.
Okay, so we'll close that portion of the public hearing, and we'll move on to the student recognition.
Okay, great. So, we are recognizing athletes tonight. I'm good. Yep. I just want to make sure people can hear me before I get there. Right. So, we're recognizing athletes tonight who have reached the states and county championships, and we have 4 sets of athletes here tonight. So our girls soccer team, where are you guys? All right, women's soccer. Okay, made it. We're going to say a little bit about you in a minute, but they made it all the way to the Final Four at the state. We have our women's cross country team. Where are you? And won the Nassau County Championship for the 11th time in a row. Right. We have our men's cross country team here with us tonight. Where are you guys? Great. And we have tennis players. Where are our tennis doubles? They're walking into, all right, so we will do them last, okay? So we're going to come around the front. We're going to give you some certificates. We're going to I have a little thing to read about each of the teams. We'll read your names. You're going to get a certificate, and you get the obligatory North Shore pen. I got one when I was appointed, and they're quite terrific. So, okay. Okay, so this year the girls varsity soccer team had a historical season. After moving up from Conference AB2 to Conference AB1, head coach Lauren Gata and assistant coach Stephen Burgos knew that despite having such a great team, there would be challenges faced this year in the top conference with the best teams in Class AB. However, the challenges were not enough to hold back the Vikings from becoming Long Island champions and one of the final 4 teams in the state final competition. It was especially pleasing to me to beat Manhasset in the county championships, and I had great fun with their former superintendent about it. The 2017-18 girls varsity soccer team finished with a conference record of 9 wins, 2 losses, and 2 ties, and an overall record of 14 wins, 4 losses, and 2 ties. The only 2 losses of conference play, which were against Manhasset, were avenged by defeating Manhasset 4-2 to win the Nassau County Championships in Cold Spring Harbor, North Shore's first ever in the history of our school. They went on to defeat Shoreham Wading River, becoming the Long Island Class AB champions, another first ever in the history of our schools. On Monday at the Nassau County Awards Banquet, the Vikings were awarded the Bob Bigelow Award for being to the top-ranked Nassau team and for finishing in the Final 4 in the New York State Conference Championships. The Vikings were ranked number 4 out of all Long Island schools in the News 12 Varsity Final Long Island Soccer Poll. How does that happen when you win? And were ranked number 19 out of all public schools in the tri-state area in News 12 Varsity Final Tri-State Girls Soccer Poll. The entire team has so much to be proud of, and every single member of the team played a part in the team's success. The coaches would also like to thank Don Lang, Margie Anderson, Pete Wass, and Mike Gonzalez for their constant support throughout the season, as well as all the parents and fans who supported them along the way.
So let's invite the coaches up to stand with us.
Terrific.
I don't think is Lauren Gata
She's
here? She is here. Terrific. Okay,
She's
so
here.
Lauren Gata and Steve Burgos,
Okay, come on.
come on up with us.
Thank you. Thank you for your support.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much for your support.
We were so proud of you.
Thank you for your support. Appreciate it.
And you guys also won the,
Congratulations. Great job. Thank you. Thank you.
Great job, Mr. Burgos.
Shake everyone's hands because it's really, really nice to have support. Thank you.
Look, why don't you guys stay with us and help us hand out the,
so you guys also won the Sportsmanship Award at the state level too, right?
We thought we were good sports. Is that what you mean? Oh, no. Oh,
Right?
Isabella Di Benedetto got the sportsmanship award.
Exactly.
Yes, the individual
Yeah,
sports-
that's the best award ever.
Yes,
terrific.
yes.
All
Okay.
right, so I'm going to hand
So,
these to
here we
you.
go. So as we call your name, come up, we'll give you your
Mr.
certificate.
Burgos, you come over here and you can hand us the pens.
Oh, okay, great. Madison Berry,
They're not on many of the girls.
Taylor Berry,
She's not here.
if you hold your
Applause. We'll
applause
do
to
it at
the end, that would be great. Lily Berger, Alexandra Caldwell, Patricia Camarano, I thought I'm Italian, Victoria Cave,
Okay,
Cave, Isabella Di Benedetto,
they must be all home studying.
Selena Fortin,
Oh, they're at practice? Okay.
Riley Gilligan.
Are they here?
If you're here, come.
If
No,
you're
we
here,
did.
come
No,
on.
those ones aren't there, but
Okay.
we have some kids here.
Isabel Glennon,
This is not a either, huh? Juliana.
Juliana Graziosi, Rochelle Guevara, Ashton Gus.
Yes.
There we go.
We got it.
passing. Congratulations.
Caroline and Nellie. Chloe Johnson. Grace Magner. Magner.
Congratulations.
Eileen Quinn. 3 in a row.
Congratulations, Eileen.
Thank you.
Gabby Scott.
All right. Oh. And right behind her,
Isabella Tedesco.
there's Isabella. Help her out. Thank you, Isabella. Congratulations.
Congratulations. This one's for you. Gabby. You got a pen? Thank you. Donatella Toko.
Toko, that's right. Yep. Congratulations, Donatella. Kaylee.
And Kaylee Welch.
All right, that's all of them. Thank you, congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so how about these Viking runners? So our girls, I'll start with our girls. Our women's cross-country team had a really impressive season, which consisted of winning the Nassau County Championship for the 11th consecutive year and finishing the regular season undefeated for the 10th consecutive year. Over that span, the team has gone on to win 128 consecutive league competitions. The undefeated 2017 North
Nope.
Shore.
You want to do them together, boys and girls?
we put it as- No.
No, let's do the
No.
girls first.
Can you tell I'm new? Okay, so let's-
Do we have the coach here?
all right.
Can we
so
bring the
Neil,
coaches up, Neil? What did you do with the boys? Yeah, Dawn, why don't you come up and join us as well? We should have had you come up for the girls' soccer. We'll give you the pen duty.
all right, great.
All right.
Ariana Bordeaux. Hannah Bradford.
Congratulations, Ariana. Thank you. Congratulations, Anna.
Julia Carroll. Madeline DiPietro.
I know, right?
Carolyn Doyle. And Killian Doyle.
Congratulations.
Your pen?
Don't forget your pen.
No relation. Huh? Okay.
Congratulations, Tilly.
Sarah Hoyle.
Congratulations, Sarah.
Elizabeth Glock.
Congratulations, Lizzie.
Fiona Regan.
Congratulations, Fiona.
Sophie Rosencrantz.
Congratulations. Congratulations.
Pamela Sass.
Congratulations, Pamela.
Carolyn Reiner.
Caroline. Congratulations, Caroline.
Thank you.
Emma Rivera. And Nicole Schneider.
Did we get everybody? Wait, did we get everybody? Congratulations. And Isabella? And Isabella Stranakova. Congratulations. You must be missing. Congratulations.
Okay.
Okay, yep. Let's put them. All right, guys, we're going to take some pictures. Make sure you can squeeze in over there. There's one, and one more. Okay, thank you, guys. Thank you.
Coach Ferraro. Come on up. So our undefeated 2017 North Shore men's cross country team were the division champions, 5th year in a row, conference champions, 4th year in a row, and county champions, 3rd year in a row. Cross country team also won the Nassau County State Qualifier meet and competed in the state championships in Rochester, New York, where they came in 7th place. As the #1 runner in Nassau County, Jack Rosencrans also advanced to the New York State Federation Championship.
Yeah, Jack.
Thank you. Okay, Jared Faison. Thomas Irfine. Will Drexel. Ethan Lacamba.
Oh, really?
Nick.
No, Nick's here. Nick's here. Why do we have two? Okay. All right, there you go. Nick, congratulations. I thought you had a brother.
Jack Rosencrans.
There, that's you.
Colin Sullivan. Oscar Varela.
All right, who did we forget? Ah, that's where it was. Congratulations.
And Ethan Loring.
Funny. Something was wrong with his certificate. Two certificates. One from girls and one from boys. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, this is our tennis. And then Mr. Kleiner. Coach Klein. I'm calling you Mr. Klein. That's what I'm used to. Coach Klein. Congratulations. Yes.
So Anna and Olivia Scordo earned the right to represent Nassau County at the New York State Doubles Championship by reaching the semifinals of the Section 8 Doubles Tournament. They placed third out of 55 teams. At the New York State Doubles Championship, Ava and Olivia won 2 rounds to reach the quarterfinals. They lost a tough match 4-6, 3-6 to the eventual state champions. In fact, Ava and Olivia gave them their toughest match the entire tournament. Ava and Olivia earned all-state honors for their achievements.
Wow, terrific.
Ava,
Which one's Ava? Congratulations. Congratulations. Thank you. There you go. Olivia. All right. Thank you. Yep. All right, so. Let's move on to the, yeah, let's do the SGO first.
yeah, we should let them go, right?
Yeah.
Thank you,
yeah.
everyone.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Did you see Celia tonight? No?
I wasn't paying, I didn't
Yeah.
notice.
Okay. All right.
So, is this on? Okay. We just want to first start on Tuesday. We want to recognize the students that were inducted into the Art Honor Society. So, the Art Honor Society is fairly new to the school. I think it's the second year it's been going on. And so, it was Tuesday, and we had a wonderful speaker, Jo Gray, a local artist. So, she spoke to us, and it was really wonderful. And Lindsay's going to keep going.
Okay. So for SGO, since we just took on, I think Emily mentioned last meeting, the Thanksgiving families, how we did 2 Thanksgiving families. We're also taking on 2 adoptive families. So this is through Interact Club, which is around Christmas time, and anyone can take on a family. They have a lot of them. And basically what it is that you get an anonymous family. You don't know their name, but you have like a list of like the family members. So usually like for SGO, we get a bigger family because there's a lot of us. And it basically is like their Christmas list, so you're kind of like their secret Santas in a way. So we're taking on 2 adoptive families for SGO, so that's going to happen in the month of December. And also the senior play just started, which is really exciting. And are we allowed to say what it is?
I'm not sure if we're allowed to say what it is.
But I don't think so, right? Okay, so
If you have to ask, then don't.
yeah, yes, that's what my mom says. So the senior play just started. And so that was exciting. So all the seniors like have to audition if you want to, but you have to audition either way. But a lot of the seniors are just gonna like.
They had like I think 100 auditions. I think they said it was supposed to be originally 2 days, but they had it extended because so many kids were trying out, which is awesome and totally funny because no one really has acting experience like the seniors, so it's really interesting.
Disastrous.
And
then lastly, building off of like the theater department, the musical was just announced, so it's Legally Blonde. So they're holding, I think we just had like the general meeting for like cast and crew, and then they're going to be holding auditions next week,
December 7th.
December 7th, and it's really exciting because it's Mr. Wilgoose's second show here, and it's like the biggest show that North Shore's kind of done because they have 20 members in the cast, and there's like 3 set changes per, so it's going to be really exciting. So keep an eye out for that.
Yeah. And then also sports night, that's exciting. That's coming up in February. So SGO, we just started to prepare for that. And we picked our theme, like we finally decided on movies. So next meeting, we'll break it up and every grade will be assigned a category. So we're thinking like romance, action, horror. So that's exciting. And tomorrow, the boys are having their first basketball game home. I'm not sure the time. I'm sure it's later in the evening, but yeah, so that's exciting. And that's it.
Okay,
Great.
Thank you.
thanks a lot. Okay, we'll move on to the report from the superintendent.
Terrific. Good night, guys. So I hope that everyone enjoyed relaxing Thanksgiving celebrations with your family and your friends. And because of the break, we've had not so much time in between our last meeting and tonight. So I have a pretty short update. So it was a lot of fun and with a lot of pleasure that I welcomed and congratulated our student athletes tonight. Tonight it's a good night to be a Viking, right? So with our winter season underway, we'll look forward to many successes as the year unfolds. I'd like to welcome Mr. Cousins, who joins us tonight as we set parameters for our study of the Advanced Placement and International program, Baccalaureate program at North Shore High School. And I see Ms. Binion is here as well, so thank you very much for coming. Tonight's discussion is designed to be one of initial inquiry and brainstorming for the board to direct our paths of inquiry. So with that said, we welcome the board's discussion, and rather than provide answers to specific questions tonight, we'll simply be collecting information to inform our analysis. So they often say timing is indeed everything, so it is a most opportune time for me to be recommending the appointment of Dr. Carrie Titone as North Shore's teacher leader for Advanced Placement and the International Baccalaureate. Carrie joins us from Northport High School, where she has taught Italian and Spanish since 2006. She has a wide range of experiences with all levels of learners and has taught courses at all levels, including Advanced Placement and International Baccalaureate. She is a dynamic leader who has demonstrated a keen sense of good pedagogy through the process, embodies our shared valued outcomes, and the IB learner profile in her words and in her actions. Her dissertation involved research surrounding the qualities that facilitate innovation among teachers and administrators. And pending the board's approval, Carrie will join the Viking Nation on January 2, 2018. So welcome. Our fall newsletter has a new name, a new look, and is packed with great content. It's now called News from the Viking Nation and will be appearing in mailboxes beginning next week. And I want to thank Shelley Newman for all of your hard work in getting that done. And just so we know that the momentum is moving forward, I'll begin the planning process to commence our strategic planning process tomorrow afternoon. I have a meeting scheduled with our consultant. So please be on the lookout for much more information on how everybody can be engaged in that process moving forward. So with that said, I wish everybody a lovely start to the holiday season, and look forward to seeing you all at evening conversations and coffees with the superintendent as they unfold. Great.
I'm going to seize control of the agenda.
Go for it.
Thank you for your report.
You're welcome.
We will move on to action item 6, which is the approval of the minutes from November 16th. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
A second? Any discussion? All in favor of approval? Thank you. Action item 7 is the approval of the treasurer's reports for June, July, and August of this year. Do I have a motion? And I have a second with Dave. Is there any discussion? Yes,
Question.
please.
So 3 at once because it's the summer months and they're lumped together?
No. We wait till the final audit is completed before we wrap up June. And unless we wrap up June, we can't go to July and August. It's always late. Take note.
Thank you, Olivia. Any other comments? All in favor of approval? Thank you. We will move on to regular business, which is primarily a discussion. We are going to be discussing amongst the board setting the parameters for how we would like to move forward with having a discussion about the AP and the IB programs.
I'm sorry. I have a family thing. I'll be back in 10,
Sure.
by all
15
minutes.
Take your time.
But Dr. Giarozzo, do you wish to further frame that
Absolute-
discussion for us?
Absolutely, sure. So, As everybody knows, we've had the International Baccalaureate Diploma Program running at the high school for several years now. And one of the questions that arose upon my arrival to the district and inquiries was, how is our AP program situated within the program at the high school, and how is the IB program situated within the general program at the high school? And there was lots of questions and conversation around how the program is structured and how students are being taught and how they are being assessed, and the extent to which was one of the primary questions that came up for me in as I was entering into the district was, to what extent can the advanced placement program and the international baccalaureate program exist within a high school simultaneously? And so we have been talking about some of those questions over the course of time, and in preparation for a formal board presentation that we'll be doing on January 25th to the board, we thought that this would be a good opportunity at this point in time for us to speak with the board, allow you to have a discussion amongst yourselves and give us direction on what is it that you want to know, what path of inquiry should we be taking as a leadership team in order to bring you information that answers your questions and informs our ability to make a recommendation as we think about the academic program for 2018-19. So with that said, we have, for the board, we have just some papers that we can pass around here, right? And they're essentially reference documents, so, okay.
Thank you.
So what we have for the board to, as you work through your discussion, is a master list of all AP advanced placement courses offered through College Board, a listing of all of the IB courses as offered by the IB, and assessment data from last spring on both assessments. Okay, so with that said, I'm going to sort of take a back seat and let you drive the conversation, and we'll take some notes, and then we'll be back to make sure whatever questions you have tonight are fully answered in January.
Trustees, I hope we get to hear from everybody. Does anyone want to start with their issues for how we should move forward discussing it? Thank you.
I have a lot, so I would rather if someone else has an issue go last.
You want me to go?
I'll go first, I just didn't want to take time, but make business.
The time is the time, trustee.
Okay, I just didn't want to. Good evening. So Albert, year 5 of our discussion on this. You missed me yet? No, I didn't think so. So rather than focusing on differences, what I'd really like to focus on is what I think you and I have agreed on over the years. And I think it's really important. For those of you who don't know, I had a child in the first cohort of IB, and I had a child go through the AP Senior Experience Program. So I sort of have a basis of comparison. So I think both these curriculums are important for our children because I think they prepare our children for college, right? And what we really want to do is get the most students in advanced courses, even if it's just one course, because that exposes them to a much higher level of thinking, and it's better preparation for college later on, because really our job here is to prepare them for the next step on their journey, right? But I think every student learns differently, and every student has different goals in their high school expectations. So what I'd really like to see is more opportunities in the AP curriculum for students who do not want to invest or in a 2-year curriculum or are intimidated by a 2-year curriculum, for students who want to take 2 advanced sciences and not have to do it simultaneously their junior year and then be forced to either drop their music or drop lunch, which is just unacceptable. Every child should have lunch. It's important for their mental and physical well-being. So for children who want a complete education but are not necessarily focused on the sciences, I think that would be very helpful to have a true offering of AP Sciences. And it's also important because I think really what happened in the IB Biology, at least my son's junior year, they really had AP Biology, quite frankly, with an overlayer of IB. It was overwhelming. It was difficult to get tutors for the students. And as a result, once they took the AP exam, at least a third of those students dropped out their second year and took another science, which left a large demand on physics that we had difficulty accommodating. So for those students who really just want to do those 2 courses and be prepared for college but not studying it, I really think it would be better served to have a true AP and a true IB curriculum. I don't think the co-seating really works well in that situation. I also don't think the co-seating necessarily works well in the language and literature. I think AP Comp is a very specific exam that has very specific requirements. You had students trying to take that exam without the proper preparation. I think the scores were probably not as high as they were in prior years, but I don't know that for a fact. I would be interested to see that in terms of 4s and 5s. U.S. history would be a great course offering to bring back in the social studies area, which would allow kids to take another science, another class the next year. One of the other things I would like for us to look at are the scores in the class, their grade point averages compared to the scores on the exams. I believe there was a huge disparity. People in some courses more than others. I think parents were shocked when they saw those scores. After spending a year, it's important for these kids not only to be exposed to these courses, but be confident that they did well in those courses and that they mastered the materials. Because let me tell you, as a parent of a college student, you will get that call at midnight, "Mom, I have a test tomorrow. It's on a semester's worth of work. It's on half a semester's work. I'm panicking. I'm not going to pass it. I don't know what I'm going to do." And you have to say to them, take a deep breath. You took 1 million AP courses. You took 1 million IB courses. You did well on those courses. You know how to do this. Do what you always have done. And they say, okay, thank you. That's what I needed to hear. So it's important for them not only to be prepared for college, but to know that they can meet the expectations of college. And those scores are important for them for that reason. And it's also important for college credits. And there are very many more opportunities in the AP courses and the curriculum to get college credit. Those college credits allow students to graduate early. They allow students to take advanced courses so that they can really delve into areas that they, in more in depth, that they would wish to go in by bypassing the preliminary requirements. So I think the curriculums do have positives and negatives. I think the IB curriculum, on a positive side, really does focus more on presentational work. I think it focuses more on collaborative work, group projects, which are really very large in the college setting. But I know for a fact that there were students who were very much intimidated by the IB curriculum. And there are students who would have taken maybe an AP US History, an AP Comp, and they didn't, at least get that one experience. And I think that's important. So those are some of my thoughts.
Thank you. And I want to add that for tonight's discussion, we're not looking for specific recommendations or opinions or responses from the trustees or our administrators. The purpose of this is to get a sense from the board of the framework what information you need to make good decisions, what kinds of criteria we're looking to evaluate that data on, and how it is that we'd like to think about what our goals are in choosing a program. But Trustee Lemmer, I think you had a
Exactly.
comment?
Yeah, so I just think, building on that, there's a lot of opinions that people have about these two programs, about the programs inherently, what they are in and of themselves, and the way they interact and the way they were implemented. The reason I believe that we're doing this, I think the reason we set it as an agenda for ourselves as a goal this year, was not to presume that we knew the results already, but that the purpose of this inquiry is to get the information to help us understand what's actually happening. So then we can work on implementation and improvements to make it better for our students, so they are having a better experience in this building, they're having a better experience outside this building on our fields and on the stage and all the other areas in which they pursue their interests, and also, of course, as Marianne said, as they succeed beyond here, and not just in college, but also in their lives, that they pursue a life of inquiry, they pursue a life of understanding goal setting and achieving their goals. So, with that said, these are the things that I was hoping we would focus on to frame this discussion. And so they're more bullet pointy because they're things I would like to know before we can go to the next step. I'd like to know specifically, forget about the costs that have been expended already. I'd like to know the cost to run both, to run one or the other, specifically dollars and cents, so we can really lay that out and understand what that means in dollars and cents. I'd like to have an analysis of homework and student stress in some way to see how the students who are in this program are able to find the time to participate in the other activities, extracurriculars, et cetera, that are the students pursuing either of these programs at the expense of getting a full-rounded education and a full-rounded experience here. And also, we see our students dealing with stress and not always handling it well. I don't know what students can deal with stress. I don't know what adults deal with stress that well. But how our students are doing with that is something I'd like to see. Linda, this is probably more from your angle. I would like to know specifically, so as you know, I was a college admissions counselor many years ago. And what I try to remember, I have a mirror, so it's easy to remember how long ago that was, that the way that AP credits were viewed by colleges in the 1990s, I don't believe is the way AP credits are viewed today. And so the idea of students bulking up on an AP curriculum and being able to finish college in 2.5 or 3 years, my perception is that's an outmoded understanding of the way things work. I'd like to know some specifics about that so we can talk about it in real terms and not about perceptions that may or may not be relevant about what's happening in the world today. I would like to know a comparative analysis for other Nassau districts that have integrated the two programs that do either a dual track or a co-seating program, which we have talked about as well. Those are two options that schools have done. See how those students are doing, see how college acceptance rates to all levels of schools have done with those. That's a big task, but I think we can look at that to some degree as we pursue these two options. It's helpful to know what other districts and other students are doing. And the final piece I wanted to know is how we are educating our kids or introducing our kids to the different options, the different paths of their academic curriculum they're going to be choosing, whatever curricula they choose to go with, whether it's the IP, whether it's AB, whether it's a mix, or whether it's a Regents diploma, or whatever they choose. I would like to know how we go about educating our students. Does it happen in 8th grade? Does it happen in a 9th grade transition? Is it happening throughout? I know obviously we're moving to a K through 12 counseling program, which looks at things more holistically, but I'd like some details of how that's going to be approached. That's my 2 cents.
Thank you. I would like to hear from everybody. Trustee Galati.
Thank you. There's no question there's merit to both programs, and I think it's well worth looking at being able to do both because we pride ourselves on having students be able to make informed selections, and in order to do so, I think they have to have that opportunity. Trustees Russo and Ludmore covered quite a bit in what they had to say in terms of overview. I think it's important to try and see what has happened to some of our students who've gone on beyond here and who've experienced the program. I know it's tough to do with the IB because it's basically a new program here. And the current freshman class in college are really the first group who've gone through it. But I think it'd be interesting to see how they stack up one against the other, you know, and I personally believe there is a place for both here. Certain areas are going to be stronger than others, and I think we need to look at really what it is the students are primarily interested in getting out of the program here, having good information for the students and for the parents to make really informed decisions. I think that's part of the issue, because people are very emotional about this, and I don't know, in terms of nuts and bolts, how clear the distinctions there are for these people. So I think it's important for us to make that more available. I know we do have information on the website about the IB program. I think we need to spread that out a little bit more and have a little bit more dissemination of information for people to really make informed decisions. I mean, the piece about the economics of it, the feasibility of running them concurrently, I think is certainly important, and I would hope that that would be something that can be done within the framework of what we're dealing with not any more expenditure than we have right now. But I think it's really important to take a really broad look at this to see how are we servicing our kids best.
Thank you. Trustee Commander?
Yes, David, everyone really has covered so many of the issues. I specifically also had a question about the comparative cost of the programs that I'd like to see. I too had questions regarding the application of AP credit in colleges, because several conversations I had last year with college counselors indicated what Dave was mentioning before. The other thing that was mentioned in analysis of student stress, not only whether they have opportunities to participate in other activities, but I'd like to know what we're doing to address that stress and what support we're giving students, because this is an ongoing issue. This overload, not having lunch, not having time, not having the anxiety. Very important for me to address those issues and what support we're giving kids.
Thank you. I'll add for my part that in terms of parameters, I'm also interested in the well-being aspect, if, in particular, if we can get some actual data. IB versus AP or together, what we know from other schools about the impact on students' sleep, stress levels, whether they eat lunch. If we can get more than anecdotes, I'd be very interested in seeing that. And I don't want to bite. I think we've had a lot of conversations that just indicate this sort of struggle between AP and IB and something in between. And I think that's a very limiting conversation in a lot of ways. And we have to be open to the idea that we could pick either one and end up with sort of a race to nowhere, right? Where we're just kind of running our kids into the ground and which one has the most hoops they can jump through versus how it is that we want to think about kids' overall experience in high school. And to that extent, I am interested in how whatever program we're talking about supports the SVOs, because I think those are outcomes that we all feel very positively about. And so I think that's got to be part of the conversation. I think this has been brought up to some extent before, but the idea that we don't want to go with a program that's so rigid that kids don't have the flexibility to pursue the things that they're genuinely interested in. I think our schools have had a very rich history of some very high quality electives and the ability for students to do very interesting things, and I don't want to lose that to either a schedule that's inherently rigid or a schedule that's rigid through some intense competitiveness that kids can't do those things. Those are my comments, but I did want to pause for a minute.
I think Tony had some too.
Do you have
I
some
don't have
comments?
any. I have
If you may
CC.
have some, and I also just want to pause and just say, to acknowledge that if it's possible, if our administrators here, including our superintendent, thinks we've really overlooked some important piece that you'd like to suggest, please feel free. Pete.
So these are Tony's notes, if we want to sort of get them out there a little bit,
Okay.
right?
Here is my best guess. I think Tony looks like she would like a description of if you were to try and have both programs in a robust way, a description of what that would look like. Like, she'd like to hear what does it look like to try and have successful AP and IB together in this school, which is relatively small. She wants to talk about how that fits in with long-term goals for the students, and in particular, innovation and long-term learning, by which I think she means even after they leave here. She has made a point about real outcomes. And again, trying to get it at the data versus the perception or sort of talk in the community. And to have a way to look at scores that feels like a real comparison between the AP and the IB. And she may well read the minutes and announce some point of my interpretation is incorrect, and I'm open to that.
So one question I would have for the board is, so the extent to which so we would do this anyway, but the extent to which the board wishes to look at assessment data in both programs, that didn't seem to come up as much as some of the other things.
I think I did raise it. There's a couple assessment data. I'd like to see historically the scores on the AP exams where the curriculum was actually taught as compared to the students trying to do it on their own where there was no course offering. I'd like to see a comparison, which we've never had, which is the grade point, the average, in conjunction, in comparison to what the scores were
that I got.
on the exams, if there's a disparity in those scores.
Okay, great. So,
I was just going to say, I don't think I'm wrong, correct me if I am, in that what she's getting at is the scores are interesting, but we know given all of the change that's gone on, we're extremely interested in the context, right? Where those came from, what was,
Right. I look, we could sit here and argue AP versus IB, and the truth of the matter is they're both going to prepare our children well for college, right? And the truth of the matter is that there are pros and cons to each curriculum, and those pros and cons may even vary upon the individual student, right? I mean, there's a lot of latitude here, and it's hard to put your hands around the numbers. But what would be, there were a large number of students, a significant number, let's say, I won't say large, a significant number of students who were trying to take the AP exams while taking an IB course. So it would be interesting to see how those students fared with something like American history, AP US history. That curriculum differs significantly from HODA, so there was material that wasn't covered. How well did they do on that, as compared to something like IB biology, where the first year the curriculum really adhered very much to the AP curriculum, and maybe that had vice versa, maybe that had a negative effect on the kids when they were taking their IB exam 2 years out, who were really interested, which I think is a more research-based program, the IB biology, than and a skill set more than a content set. So I think it's kind of hard to compare AP scores to IB scores because I think they're measuring different things. So I think what you really have to look at is the co-seating working? Is there a demand for an additional curriculum? I think, my sense is just, from having been in the school, and obviously this is not scientifically based, that had there been offerings in the junior year in history and in and in English literature that were not IB, that there would be a certain demand for those traditional courses. And then they would have the opportunity in senior year maybe to do something different rather than be committed to a 2-year program, or at least, tip their feet in the water and see how they did in that particular course. And maybe that would encourage them the next year to take another AP course. So I'm not sure that the data, unless you're looking at in terms of what was taught and the achievement on the scores and, the comparison in the prior years, I don't know any other way of measuring, honestly.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I think it's a good direction. I think from what I got from what you're saying is, we talk a lot about younger kids and how teaching the test and using these tests to evaluate the kids is such a blunt instrument. But when you get into these older kids, these tests are what they're training for, and they're going to have to be doing these tests, and they do measure things. The IB tests, which are much less, which are more, they're less A, B, C, D, and they're much more analysis. They're much more digesting and proving that you've really understood the curriculum, being able to express it through writing as opposed through, I'm trying to think of another word for regurgitation, because that's not really fair to the IB curriculum, to the AP curriculum, but there are some analogies there. But I think what you're saying is there are some classes in which the content is more conducive to a co-seating, and we could use test scores to help us identify where it's working and where it's maybe not working as well. Is that?
Yeah, that's, or that, there's a demand, or that if you look at the test scores and you see that you had, in U.S. history and in AP comp, which were not offered, you had a significant number of students sitting for those exams, right? And maybe not doing as well as they had in other years when that was there. And the other number that I think would be very interesting would be the number of kids who dropped IB in a particular course and did something different the next year. So if you had, I don't know how many kids who took HOTA, there was a large number. How many of those kids the next year decided to take AP US Government and Politics? How many kids decided to drop HOTA and take AP Lit? How many kids dropped IB Bio and decided to take physics or something else? So, because I know a couple of those kids. So it'll be interesting to see those numbers. I think would be very telling as well as to what the demand is, right? What they're looking at.
Sure. Thank you. I can add something, but
Did you have something, Albert? Yeah.
please.
I will be presenting all of that. I mean, that data I actually presented at PTO.
Mm-hmm.
If anybody, before people came to the PTO meeting. So I have all.
I don't get the emails, or I would have been there, Allison. I would have been.
Mr. Cousins, it was 5.5,
The really
please.
important, I think, thing to know is that AP, there's no such thing as an AP program. And I heard that word used a lot. AP, they're just courses.
You're right.
Teach courses. They don't have, you could do like a capstone to the program.
Yes.
But AP in its function here, but it's never a program, it's really important because IB as a program is a system and it's a whole other gamut that requires a school shift versus AP. So I just think that the word program is an important one.
Thank you.
They're different and it requires different things. So when we look at the path of inquiry, it's not like I agree, I don't think comparing them. The one other thing, because all that data I will very easily assemble. I already have it. And I love sharing data, as you know. The one thing I think is really critical of that was said is grades, teacher grades are very individualized and in a lot of ways meaningless in that the same teacher of the same course doesn't even use the same format to calculate the grade. So looking at a teacher's grade and using an individual teacher's grade and corresponding it to performance is sort of a futile task because there's no validity to any grade that we get. And some teachers in an honors equal class, they will only give a 90 or above just because they happen to be in the class. Grades really mean very little. It's about comparison within their group, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but I this is the point I'm making, which I think you missed in that comment, is that I think when parents and students see high achievement in a grade point average and then tank the exam, whether it be a Regents, an AP exam, or an IB exam, that's what I'm getting at.
But let's not, we don't want the whole back and forth at this point. Let's wait till we get to the actual presentation.
I understand. It's just similarly though, in our school, as you see in the data, about 90% of our students now score mastery on the U.S. regions. But in the U.S. regions classes, the grades are much more distributed because it's the teachers' kind of psychology of grading. So all I'm saying is grades are a very weird thing to look at because we don't have a standard formula for grading. I understand what your point is and we can look at that. And because I always do charts of where the grades are and then on the exam. And in most cases, the exam scores are higher. But I can look at that. I just want us all to know that the teacher's grade means they're so personal to the teacher. And you could have one teacher in the same class, same student in the same class, with a different teacher. It's really different format for practice. So it's a very hard thing to look at with any meaning. That's all.
Right. So what I would add to that is, so we should, in light of all that was said here, we should be looking at the extent to which those grades, whatever they are, how well do they not correlate to a summative assessment.
But there is an embedded assumption that we want them to, and I think the scary part about that is in some of the APs, no one would be okay with what goes on the transcript. AP scores are chosen to be reported, but what goes on the transcript is the teacher gives. So those are two different things. Like colleges don't have to see an AP or an IB exam.
Some do. Some
Let me
speak and we're gonna move on.
Let me stop this, right? Because I think the question is clear, right?
Right.
Do the quarter grades correlate or not correlate to the summative assessment, and then we can take the discussion from there.
And so this discussion makes me think a couple of things, which is, for lack of a better term, I think there's some interest in what program, pardon the expression, but meaning our program, not AP versus IP, is going to encourage students to stretch themselves, right? To take harder level courses. And that I think in terms of all kinds of assessments, whether it's the teacher's grade or whether it's the AP scores, that I think we all understand that that's pretty highly contextualized and might refer to an incredibly small data set at any point. So I think the reason that the trustees weren't particularly focused on that was because of that context, and because I think a lot of us have a lot of confidence in the administrators that if we see what we think is good for our students, then the individual classes and teachers and assessments is something our administrators will work on.
Absolutely.
If we feel like we're moving in the right path. Does that feel like a fair assessment?
Yes.
Any other parameters for the discussion before, please?
Just 2 points that I want to add to the trustees' comments surrounding data. I think it's the data that you're asking for is really important data for us to look at. I just want to make sure that we also, in accumulating that data, that we are mindful of when we do the research for it, that we're mindful of what are the circumstances surrounding the data. Because I could think of some circumstances where the data, just without those circumstances presented, could be taken in a particular path. So I think it's data with any asterisked information that's important to the data. And then the other piece is looking at the data long term as well. So looking at, what were the scores prior, like I'm thinking about AP. What were the scores over the course of these years, and then what were the scores once IB came in, and what were the scores of the co-seeded IB, and so on and so forth. So I think a longitudinal look at data is also very important.
I think we all appreciate that. Thank you. Anything? Okay, so I think we are ready to move on to comments from the public. If you have a comment, we're asking that you come to the podium and give us your name and town of residence, and we appreciate your thoughts and comments.
Hi, Jim Garcharis, 12 Bowden Lane, Glen Head, New York.
Thank you.
What I think is very important is, number one, is knowing the facts. You have to understand all of the facts relating to IB and AP. You don't make a decision, I think, until you know all those facts. And as Peter knows and the board knows, I've always been very involved in just numbers. That's my mindset. I'm a numbers guy. The numbers that I think are key, there are 37,100 high schools in this country. Approximately 2% even offer IB. 99.99% of them offer only IB. Most of the ones that do offer IB and AP. So number one is we need to understand the facts. Number two is we need to understand why. We need to understand pluses and minuses both. And let me give an example of one that I know. With IB, if you have only IB, no AP option, you can only take 3 IB level exams by the time you apply to colleges. And as Peter knows, because he's going through this just like I'd gone through it, to go to certain schools, you need to sit for exams, and they need, if you want to go to a certain high-level school, they will not look at you unless you've taken a certain number of those level exams. And I will give an example. Boston College. Boston College, if you're applying and you have taken less than 5 AP level exams, your application goes in a no list unless there's another reason why. They should look at you, whether you're an athlete, whether you're talented in some other way. So if you take IB only, you can only take 3 of those IB exams by the time you're in 11th grade. So right there puts you on a bad list. And that is one of the reasons why so few schools only offer IB. So I think those facts have to be known. We need to know why it is that none of the New York City level public schools, Stuyvesant, Brooklyn Tech, that level offer IB. They only offer AP. We need to know why the public school, why the best private schools in Manhattan do not offer them. Why does Chapin, why does Trinity not offer IB? They only offer AP. We need to know why the schools in the North Shore of Nassau County and throughout Long Island, why is it that most of those top highest rated schools, I'm sorry, not most, all of them, don't offer IB, they only offer AP? And if any, why is it that the schools that offer IB also offer AP? So we need to know those facts, right? We need the numbers facts. I'm a numbers guy, that's what I do. You need to know the numbers facts. Now what you also, if you're going to analyze it the way I analyze it, is you need to know the facts. So now you want to talk to, you got to know the facts as to what happened last year. Peter and I have exchanged data, and I get data every year. And there are more than 600 kids that sat for AP exams last year. Only 300 and plus, I don't know the exact number, I apologize, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but a little above 300 took IB level classes. So why is it that if there are only IB courses offered, why is it that so many more kids are taking AP level courses? And Peter, if you look at my note, you'll be able to see, it's actually summarized all the numbers.
What?
I sent you an email with.
Oh, yeah, I saw
Wait,
that.
wait.
Yeah, okay, I don't know if that's what you're looking at. So.
No, I'm looking at the AP scores.
Oh, I'm sorry, I apologize.
356.
So I think we need to know, that is an important fact. Then we also need to know the facts relating to what the scores were last year. The year that we only offered IB exams, and the year where more people took AP than IB exams. And when you look at the results, the scores were abysmal on both. And from what my research is, the reason for that, I've spoken to parents, The reason for that is the people that decided to take AP exams, they had to do it on their own. School didn't teach them. So their school, it was entirely on themselves to learn it. So the scores on the AP exams were abysmal. Scores on the IB exams were also abysmal. I don't know why, but they were, and the facts will show that. So we need to understand that. And ultimately what you need to understand is, well, what's the options? Okay, somebody likes IB. Why not also offer AP like everyone else does? And when I say everyone, I'm a numbers guy. Statistically, 37,100 offer, 37,100 high schools, approximately 900 even offer IB. Of that 900, only about 75 offer IB only. So statistically, why is it they're doing that? Then we need to know the facts. Well, why is it these other schools have considered it? Garden City School District considered it, said no. Manhasset School District considered it, said no. Well, why? We need to understand that. We need to also talk to these best schools and say, hey, to get into those schools, do you really need to take more than 3 standardized exams? Because what I can tell you is, I know that you do. So we need to understand, well, how are the kids going to get around that? So essentially what we need to do is know the facts. Before we make a key decision, you got to know advantages of IBs, disadvantages of IBs, AP, what is required to take advantage of that, right? That's number one. That's the way I always look at it. Numbers 1 starts. Then number 2 is, what are your options? We're very fortunate. We have a terrific school. We have a terrific administration. And we have a big enough budget where we can offer both. And we did do that. We offered it 3 years ago. We started offering AP and IB, but I know why. But essentially the AP classes were removed, so the only option was IB. And I'm not happy with the reason why it did happen. So we need to understand what those other options are. Why would we not do it? So, you know, it's really a useful bit of information as well. And this is something that was really kind of said it all to me. Perfect situation is talk to parents whose kids experienced 11th grade last year. And ask them, what was your experience with IB versus AP? Why is it that you took more than 600 AP exams and just about 300 and change IB exams? Ask them their experience, because it's very easy to make a decision not knowing the facts, but the people that have experienced it, they're most informed. They will make decisions going through it. You know, I'll give you an example. I've got a sister-in-law. She tells me all the time I'm raising my kids wrong, that everything I do is the wrong way to do it, and she has no kids. And I've got 4 kids. She comes over and she tells me we should all be sitting, I should be leaving the office, we should all be sitting down and having dinner at 6 o'clock every day. It's not possible. So the right thing is to be able to make informed decisions. We got to know these facts. We got to know the statistics. We got to know the options. And it's got to be, all of that has to be gathered. I think it all needs to be publicized facts-wise so that people can make informed decisions, as well as citizens in the school district, all presented so that they can participate. And I think the key is talk to the parents who experienced this last year. Talk to the parents, or talk to the children who graduated or who is now in senior year and selected a college, and ask them, what was your experience last year with IB? Why is it that you guys took so many more AP exams than IB exams? And also, why were the scores so poor? Or scores on the AP exam and the IB exams significantly lower than Garden City, significantly lower than Manhasset, significantly lower than Pelham, which is Mr. DiRizzo's terrific school district, significantly lower than all of those. Why? I think we need to know those facts so we make an informed decision.
Thank you, Mr. Nateris, for your time and your opinions. Next comment?
So, Jerry Romano, Seacliff. So just to follow up on that.
Hi, Mr. Romano. Thank you.
Hi. If his figures are correct, not only are those scores significantly lower, we're paying significantly more. And from just listening to this discussion this evening, it's really become very clear to me that there aren't processes for evaluating what you're doing and how the money's being spent. Even though you're in the business of educating and testing people, You're not testing yourselves, which is why we have a school budget now that's ballooned to over $100 million, okay? You're spending more than 30% more than Manhasset's spending, and Manhasset turns out academically superior students, all right? AP and IB classes are not required. And your job, by the way, I hear this all the time, your job is not to prepare students for college. It's not. Show me where it says that. I bet it doesn't say that anyplace. You could believe that, okay? That's like going to school to learn how to fly a plane because you want to be an astronaut. First, you have to learn how to fly a plane. They're not going to teach you how to fly a spaceship in flying school, all right? You may learn the basics. Your job is to educate the students in this community. You're spending too much money doing it, okay? The numbers that you sent me, not that you sent me, but that were on the, in the minutes from the October meeting, that you're spending $7,723 more than Manhasset, that's a big number. Look at it this way. There's a Honda for sale in Manhasset that's $27,000. Has better features, better performance. The same Honda dealer here in North Shore, just happens to be one, is selling it for 30% more. Everybody raise their hand who's going to pay 30% more for the car with less features. How many people? No one. But you forced us to pay for things that you don't even know what you're spending them on. You claim that you've got 30 more teachers than Manhasset. Is that 30 more teachers by student population? Or is that just 30 more teachers than Manhasset? The student population in Manhasset is like 1,000 more students. It's 50% greater than here. So if it's 30 more teachers, it's really out of whack. What are we getting for it? There are no processes in place to evaluate that. I don't know why. I don't understand why. I've been involved with the Emmy Awards for over 25 years. This whole discussion I heard would have never happened in one of our meetings. I sit down in a committee meeting, the professionals come in and say, we had this many submissions in a category, or we're getting more cooking shows, or we're getting more this, and they make a recommendation. We don't have a big discussion about it. They make a recommendation. We talk about it, we vote on it, we move on. Sometimes we do what they want, the professional staff wants. Sometimes we don't, because we make the ultimate decision. It's really, really apparent to me that it doesn't seem like all of you don't know what's going on. The professional staff, there's a lot of over $200,000 a year staff people in the school district, and you don't know what's going on. What's it going to take to know what's going on? Is it unreasonable? I have to tell you, a lot of people are reading my email that you've all seen, okay? And I've distributed through the community. They're the people who fix your cars and sell your homes and feed you in your restaurants. And they all stop me and they say, hey, what's going on? Did you get your answers? I said, no. What did you think? They don't know. They don't have the answers. The school district doesn't have the answers. So what's it going to take to get the answers we need? Do you think we need to have answers about how you're spending 30% more than the top performing school districts? I do. I bet everybody here in this room does. I bet if you walked out into the street in this community, everybody would say, yeah, why are you spending 30% more of my money on things that you don't know that are producing results? You have no idea. You don't have a clue. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Romano, for your time and your opinions. Is there additional?
It's not opinion, it's fact.
Thank you.
What I spoke about was facts, okay?
Mr. Mazzella, your name and town of residence?
Rob Mazzella, Glenhead. I'm not sure if it was mentioned or not, but I have two kind of additional things. I guess back when the discussions about IB began, I had two of the concerns that are still out there were what's going to happen to the non-IB diploma candidates in terms of college acceptance. The candidates I had no concern over under either scenario, IB or AP. But the non-diploma candidates, I don't know if there's anybody's looked at what types of schools they've gotten into, what type of schools they didn't get into. I think that would be interesting information. The other thing, I did ask the previous superintendent over 2 years ago if he would track the number of college credits our students were receiving This was prior to the implementation of IB, so we had 2 years of data that he said he could get without IB. And now we have, I think there's 1 year of data that we have, with 1 or 2, with IB. So just to see what the trend was in terms of number of college credits our children were coming out of under both scenarios. And that was it. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there additional comments? You're more than welcome.
Hi.
Hi.
Allison Lauren from Glen Head.
Thank you.
I currently have 3 children in the high school. I first want to say that they're all getting a phenomenal education. My oldest is a senior IB diploma candidate, and the thing I really want to say has been mentioned, but I'm here because of the social emotional piece that comes along with the expectations of our children today. I do think it's a societal issue, not just a North Shore issue, but honestly, I don't know how he does it. If I were him, I would have long ago had a breakdown. The expectations of them, not only in their school, in their courses, their college applications, they need to be athletes, they need to be, they need to be involved in community service, and it goes on. And God forbid they should have a social life and a family life as well. So that's just really, that needs to be at the forefront of all of your conversations about what we're offering our kids and what we're expecting of our kids.
Thank you. Appreciate that perspective. Thank you. Please, anyone? The floor is yours. We're listening.
It's a comment not on the IB.
Anything, please,
Great.
yes.
The last meeting, I'm sorry, Denise Reiner, Old Brookville.
Thank you, Dave. I'm sorry.
At the last Board of Ed meeting, we were talking about that organizational map.
Mm-hmm.
Is that available? Is that available for us all to
Oh, sure.
see?
Yes, of course.
Thank you. I think that would be really
In
helpful.
fact, we should, if it hasn't been, we'll have it posted to the website.
Thank you so much. And also at the last meeting, Mr. Galati, in response to Principal Rob Dennis's school's presentation, asked if the science research that the middle school students were doing, how the students were getting feedback, if they were getting feedback. And Mr. Dennis said yes, that they were, that it was purposeful. And I thought a lot about that, and I then started thinking about feedback in general. And it's only lately that I'm becoming more aware of the difference between, as Peter has stated, the big P policy and little p policy and best practices. And I hear a lot of discussion at every board meeting about the stress with the students. And one of the things, I think one of the biggest things that causes stress with the students, and I know, and I'm not downplaying all the different ways that we're trying to support our students that do not have to do with academics. I'm not downplaying that. But as far as the academic portion, there are certain things that are in place that right now I think are best practices, and some are, I don't know if they're little p or big P, but I thought that they could be looked at. One has to do with it's a P, I don't know if it's big or little, the portal closing for 2 weeks. I did a little homework and I called a few of our neighboring districts, and in fact, every district does have their own policy. One of our neighboring sister districts has no policy, and it's left to each building as to when they're going to open and close the portal. Another one of our sister districts, when I say sister, it's just our surrounding, who we always compare ourselves with, they never close the portal. But they said they're considering it for maybe 2 to 4 days. So when it comes to stress and feedback and a way for parents to be able to support their kids, I would just like for the big P or little p, for us to reconsider the length of time that we keep that portal closed. The other thing that I've found out that it is best practice that I think maybe would do better being a little p is making a decision as to what is a reasonable period of time for once a student takes an exam, and more importantly, the quiz before the exam or the lab, what is a reasonable period of time for a child to get that feedback back so that they can use that assessment to actually aid them with the test that's coming up? Because right now, and I know that everyone is doing their best, but sometimes when there's a little p expectation, your best, you rise to that occasion. And right now, when we talk about stress, it's not infrequent that students receive back quizzes on the same days that they receive back their test results. And lo and behold, they see that they made the same mistake on the quiz that they made on the test. So we're testing without it being productive, without it being useful. Another thing that I wanted to ask about, we've had the presentations from the elementary schools, and we had the presentations from the middle school, and I look forward to Principal Cousins' presentation. As far as the lower grade levels, when we talk about the assessments that the children take and the ELAs, et cetera, and we give the percentages, and that's what we're using to present how well our students are doing. We all know that when you have a 40% opt-out rate, that those numbers are meaningless. And indeed, when Rob Dennis did his presentation, I was very delighted that at least that was acknowledged, that although they were presenting these numbers, that it didn't mean a lot. So I was thinking, since we all agree that those numbers really don't mean a lot, yet we also want to support our students and have an idea of where the strengths and weaknesses are and best ways to support them, why don't we take some time and figure out how we will assess our students? Whoever wants to opt out of the ELAs, let them opt out, and maybe only the best and brightest are taking them. Or who knows? I don't know who's taking them and who's not. But if we find our own way that we feel comfortable with the assessment and we find it helpful, then perhaps when we do our presentations yearly, the data can be meaningful, because right now it's more in good faith. That's all for today. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, just
Uh,
I just have a quick question so I can understand what you say. It's not a response, it's a question.
Is this urgent? I want to make sure everyone has time for comment.
It's going to be very quick, quicker than this. When you mentioned the portal being closed vis-a-vis student pressure, you're saying you would like it to be closed more so there will be a set period for the kids to be able to have no foot on the gas?
No, actually, what I'm saying is that in order for every parent finds a way, their own way to support. Some parents stay away from the portal, some parents are on top of the portal. And each student's needs are different, because not all students actually, some of them advocate quite well for themselves, some of them can't advocate at all. So what I'm saying is that for 2 weeks, not having, knowing how your child is doing, and then the portal opens, and for some students, they're suffering, and I think it's a long period of time. But most importantly, that to me is very important, but even more important to me is considering making it a policy for grading and, you know, for that to be in whatever is deemed timely fashion.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak? It does not have to be at all, as Denise pointed out, does not have to be on the IB AP comment. This is just public comment. Okay, we're going to close public comment, and we're going to let the superintendent speak for a minute. We're going to move into our regular business. There will be another opportunity for public comment at the very end of the meeting. For those of you leaving, thank you for coming. We appreciate your time. Dr. Giaruzza, was there anything from public comment you felt you should correct as a matter of fact?
I will let you know.
administrators, we're open to if there's any straightforward information you think we should provide in response to that.
No, I think we're okay. I think we're okay.
Okay.
Thanks. Yes,
We will,
we're gonna let.
we're slowing for the, ready to move on?
We're gonna appoint you in a couple of minutes.
Oh, is that what we're? We are moving on to our action items, and action item B will be personnel. Do you want me to do that separately, though?
Yeah, that'd be nice to do. Yeah.
I should separate it. Okay. So we have several items under action item B. I would like to start with action item B subpoint 1, Betty. You know what I'm saying? Do I have a motion to recommend to approve the probationary appointment of Carrie Tatone, teacher leader of APIB, effective January 2nd?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All in. Is there any discussion? Is there, please raise your hands, and, to show your relative, exuberance. All in favor? Thank you. Thank you for coming, and congratulations.
Congratulations.
You're welcome.
She missed the cookies.
Yeah,
You'll have
sure.
to come back for the
Yeah,
cookies.
come back for the cookies. It's so true.
You're absolutely free to go. You're welcome.
We will move on to the remainder of the personnel action items under B. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
A second?
Second.
Any discussion? Thank you. All in favor? Action item C is an approval of the resolution pursuant to Education Law Section 913, directing an employee to report for an examination. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Thank you.
Excuse me.
Action item D is the approval of the district-wide school safety plan. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
And I think I have the second. Is there any discussion? Thank you.
Just
And we do have John Hall, our Director of Facilities.
So I guess I would just like,
Thank you, John.
thank you, John. Given the realities of our world and that with electronics, the line between what's in school and out of school is blurred, would like a little clarification how this applies to social media, things that happen outside the classroom, and how we approach those things here. What becomes the school business if that's addressed here, how that all fits together. It's a vague question, but you see where I'm going.
This is the template for the district-wide plan that's very generic. The building level plans are more detailed. There's not a section on a cyber situation, but we have dealt with them, and it's on a case-by-case basis based on the information. If it's something we believe that is credible or involves police involvement, we will contact the police and ask for their guidance.
I think I can add that the safety plan does address a proactive plan for student behaviors in a lot of ways.
Yes. Yeah, so I, of course, read this in advance of tonight, and there are some areas that have to deal with all kinds of student safety issues, students putting themselves in peril, and how that's addressed. I guess it's more of a recommendation than a question is, as we progress, we might want to consider that that is more than just something that's handled on a case-by-case basis, but that we start to address it in more of a codified way, because the reality is there's more preponderance of it.
Thank you. Are there other comments? No? All in favor? We're adopting the safety plan.
Thank you.
Action item E, adoption of the Board of Education and Superintendent Communication and Operational Protocols. Is there a motion? Motion. A motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Thank you. Action item F is the approval of budget transfers. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
And a second?
Second?
Thank you. Is there any discussion or questions?
Nope.
All in favor? Joanna? Thank you. Action item G is approval of a change order. This is actually a change order in our favor on the HVAC reconstruction at the high school. Is there a motion?
Motion?
Second?
Second.
All in favor? I'm sorry, any discussion? All in favor? Action item H is the acceptance of a donation from the North Shore High School PTO to the high school guidance department. They are going to donate 2 study desk carrels for the guidance department. Is there a motion? Motion. A second.
Second?
Any discussion? Thank you, please.
Thank you to the PTO, but as part of the guidance review, there was supposed to be some renovation to the guidance department, which has taken place. I just happened to bop in there the other day, and it could be a little nicer. Could we look to the budget and see what we can do to make it a little more homey? It's kind of looks like hospital.
Well, funny you bring that up. We're going to have a number of budget discussions coming up this spring that I'm sure you're looking forward to.
Absolutely.
Listen, Olivia, I still have the trees out front, and I've made the donation.
Is there any further discussion on the donation of 2 study carrels? May I ask for a vote? All in favor? And again, thank you very much for the generosity of the high school PTO. Action item I is also a donation. It's from the Arts Angels to the high school's Fine and Performing Arts Department. Is there a motion?
Motion.
A second? Thank you. Any discussion? Of course, thank you for your generosity. All in favor? Thank you. Action item J is the approval and agreement with Mountain Lake Children's Residence. Motion?
Motion.
Second?
All in favor? Why is Joanna not raising her hand? Look, I'm running this tight ship here, okay? Action item K, approval of an agreement with Herrick's Union Free School District. Is there a motion? Motion. A second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Thank you for your enthusiastic participation. Action item L is an approval of an agreement with Melanie Nazari. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? All in favor? We will now move on to our second public comment period. That is the end of our regular business. Is there anyone that would like to speak? Lisa Vizza, Glenwood Landing, would you please give us your name and town of residence?
Lisa Vizza, Glen Head. I just want to make a comment, or it's more of a reaction, to the discussion about IB and AP. Maybe it's an emotional reaction, but I felt that it was unfair to have the discussion before Mr. Cousins was able to make his presentation of student performance. And I felt that he was kind of submarined a little bit professionally by having this APIB discussion. Even if it was high level, you had residents who came for public comment thinking it was going to be an opportunity to trash IB, which a lot of people take every opportunity of doing. Right now, I have a daughter, a graduate, who's second year at Dartmouth, who is an AP student, and I have 2 twins now in their junior year, so I have some perspective. So I'm waiting. I'm waiting to see what the results are. And so far, they're doing well. It's a lot of work, but so is AP. My other daughter was a high achiever, same. But I feel very strongly that I think this discussion was premature before Mr. Cousins was able to present the results of this the first cohort of IB. Second, I'm going to look to action item L, and I was wondering what this contracted special educator, is it secondary? It looks like it might be a secondary professional. for academic tutoring resource room. Do we not have enough special educators? Is there a demand for certain types of support and services for special ed kids? And
I mean, we can tell you more about what it's for. I don't know if we can answer
I mean, I know
the
that
picture without more of that
The backup.
staff here.
Okay. No, because it's just interesting to approve that without you understanding what that might be for. I know
We've all read
professionals
the
are often
contract.
contracted. I know, speech therapists and particular IEPs call for certain things, but this seems very general that a special educator would provide, a staff special educator might provide. I was just wondering why we're contracting out. It's just a question.
I mean, if you don't know.
I do know.
You need to talk to the special
I don't need the
education,
answer
that's fine,
today.
too.
I can give you the
You
answer.
made
to-
off, okay.
I can give you the answer today. So sometimes we have students who, for whatever reason, require their special ed services in another setting,
Okay.
and that's what this is for.
Oh, good, okay. So it wouldn't be within the building?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anyone else? We're happy to hear from you all. Okay. I just need to get back to my agenda. I apologize.
We're up to old business.
I just had to switch back between the screens. Is there any old business?
I apologize. Herman had asked me to send the LAC invitation and flyer information out, and I forgot to do it. I did send it out to you tonight before the meeting. If anybody has any comments on it, I please email it to me. It got lost in the Thanksgiving holidays. I apologize. Also, on LAC, I was watching the news this morning, and there's a bill on pending in Congress addressing the opioid crisis, and there is the budget that's being proposed, the tax plan that's being proposed is going to have implications in terms of funding for school districts. And I was wondering, would those two items be something you would like someone from LAC to look at and sort of update the board on and brief the board on? Would that be of interest to anyone?
It is of interest, I think, but I think we probably need to have bigger discussion in the context of what else they're working on, where if our legislators are already sort of on board with it.
Right. Well, it's actually kind of a broader question.
Right, but maybe
we should really think about maybe revisit what we're doing with LAC, and there's enough people there that maybe we could have someone tracking these kind of legislations that are not straightforward, like the tax plan, right? It's not a straightforward, this is going to affect schools.
Of course.
But clearly, there is going to be an effect on funding for public education, right?
And I would say, and I was struck too, not just by the impact that we could look at public education, but there are a lot of parts of the bills that seem to target teachers in particular in terms
Right.
of the out-of-pocket deduction. So there's no question there's a lot going on there. Dave has something he wants to add to this, but I was going to say, when we were talking about the agenda for the year, we had talked about revisiting the LAC priorities more often. You don't happen to know when we next plan to do that regardless, do you? I really don't.
I don't, but maybe I do.
But if that would be of interest to the board when I meet with LAC, I can ask them if that's something they would like to do and could fill in, and then we could have more meaningful discussion when we come back with priorities.
I'm not uninterested. Dave, do you have something to add to this?
Well, my response will not give Peter enough time to go find it because it's very quick. The answer is yes.
Yes.
I've always advocated for LAC to be, the word action is in LAC, but I would almost prefer, not prefer, but I would like LAC's purview to be expanded to being a research arm for the board. There's a tremendous amount of talent and knowledge on that committee, and a lot of it,
That's not being utilized well.
yes.
Yeah.
So we had talked about revisiting LAC more often, and Peter very
No,
graciously...
through no fault of LAC, from a lack of direction from
Yes,
us,
no,
so to
on
speak.
us, right. LAC is out there working all the time. We're, right, we think we're the issue. We had, to some extent, he's making a face at me. We had already scheduled to revisit LAC's priorities on January 11th. We can certainly do it then. If you feel like we need to move it up a meeting, that...
No, January 11th is fine. I just want, if that's something you would
You
like
wanted
them
to-
to, I want to give them some direction.
Do you,
Absolutely,
yes?
yes.
Because they're talking about points in the opioids are, and I think it's really important.
I agree.
And this budget is going to have a lot of implications.
It's gonna have a lot of
because
implications.
It reduces treatment, and, I mean, there are all kinds of issues.
And we should talk about that, not only LAC educating the board, which I think is probably on top of a lot of it, but maybe if this is something if there's particular legislation that we think is important, mobilizing our community to write to their congressional representatives that, either we want to see this happen or we don't want to see this happen, right?
One of the things I talked to Deb about was there was some discussion from the governor's office about limiting prescriptions for opiates to 7 days, and really limiting that and not doing 30 days for
Right.
3 refills. So any support of those types of things, are a home run as far as I'm concerned.
Right, so, and I think maybe we should have a mechanism, like you said, where we're going to revisit it more frequently. If we have people who are devoted on the LAC to, like, doing the research, if a topic comes up, that we can email Deb and ask her, could you get your little research team on this, whatever it is, right? Because I think there's a lot out there, and it's hard to keep track of everything that's going on. And certainly I think people are busy with children and work and whatever in our community, and they may not even realize that, everyone's, focused on the proposed tax plan with the removal of, your tax credits and whatnot. But I don't know that people understand what that tax plan would have, what implications it would have on education.
I think...
And I think they should be aware.
Right. Thank you. Additional old business? Tony was going to update us. She was on a conference call with some, I think I have enough of an outline of this,
I was
not
on the
to
call with her.
misstate. Oh, I'm sorry, I was going to say
No, but go ahead and then I'll fill in.
that with members of the SuperLAC group and members with the New York School Boards Association Government Relations team to talk specifically about the issue of polling places being in schools and legislation around that. So Tony was going to update us, but please.
So one of the issues that we have in schools on election day is that the Board of Elections unilaterally can select schools as polling places. And that comes with, some issues, right? But we don't have, right, in its current state, the district has no authority to say, no, we would not like to have our school used as a polling place. And it presents logistical issues, it presents issues with regard to our safety protocols, a whole host of issues. So there is, so school boards has advocated for legislation that would allow school districts to say no thank you. And so the SuperLAC is composed of Garden City and Manhasset and North Shore. And we had a conference call to talk about the extent to which the SuperLAC would like to support a letter that would endorse a change to the current legislation that exists. And so all 3 districts who were on the call felt that they were willing to support this, but we all felt that we also needed to bring it back to our respective boards and make sure that you all had an opportunity to say whether, to the extent to which you'd like to allow us to sign on to a letter to endorse this change.
I'm okay conceptually with it. I would like to see the letter, and
of
I would like
course.
to have the right to edit the letter,
Of course,
since that's what I do.
of course, yes.
I would, that seems in this day and age, some important flexibility for schools to have. Anyone? Some thoughts?
Okay, great. So we'll get back to SuperLAC, and we'll start moving that along.
I would say also under old business that I think we'd all like to assure the community that we continue to look at the water bill issue very closely, that we have talked with a lot of people and groups about it, and we are very open to people's concerns. We'd like to reassure the community that we are going to, both that we've been working for the past several years up to this point to use the funds we have to manage the tax levy in the ways that the law allows us to do. We will absolutely continue to do so going forward. And we're going to continue to look at if there are any other ways that we can support the community and, of course, safeguard from our point of view, be, very exceptional stewards of taxpayer funds and how those have to be managed. But please continue to communicate with us about your concerns, and we're certainly will keep the community apprised as we continue to make steps to move forward on a few fronts on that on your behalf too. That was my old business, but does anyone else? Old? Well, now we can take a very exciting turn to new business.
I'm on tonight.
Trustee?
New business. So I would like to take a look at supervisors, the extracurricular activity, the extra activity.
Supervisors.
Faculty.
For extracurricular.
Supervisors or.
Club advisor?
Club advice. No, the extra,
No.
but it's not just clubs, it's the extracurricular activities.
Supervisors?
Supervisors. That was, you used supervisor, that was the
Yes.
right term. I
Yes.
thought maybe there was a different word. So as we know, under the CBA, that we have a list of extracurricular activities, and the teachers have first dibs. We post it, right? And the teachers respond to that, and if there is a faculty member in the building that responds, that faculty member should be appointed. But then there are times when we cannot find faculty members to fill the slot. So I have a couple of questions, and I'd really like to look at how this is done. I'd like to see if the postings are how the postings are done, if we're casting a sufficient net to get our own faculty to do these, supervise these extracurricular clubs, sports, fine and performing arts. Obviously, we would much rather have one of our faculty members who's undergone an extensive background check and is fingerprinted, to be, and someone who is, responsible in the school to be in charge of these clubs and sports and productions, the coaches. So I'd like to see if that's done, how it's done. Is it done in a consistent manner? Right? Is a standard process followed? Because I'm not sure exactly who does the posting and how the selection is made. And then when we go to an outside vendor, an outside person, do we advertise it? Are there interviews conducted? What's the criteria? How do we determine from multiple applicants who gets selected for these positions for stipends? So with our children, I'd like to know, do they undergo a background check? Are they fingerprinted? Do we, if they do it in consecutive years or more than once, do we then do another background check? Do we check the registries, the sex offender registries? What are we doing to make sure that we're getting the best people, that our children are safe? How often we are doing that? Do we have a procedure in place? Is that followed? And what are basically what are the protocols? How are we making these determinations? And are we making sure that our children are, and are they evaluated, right? So I know that I think the coaches get evaluated. I don't know if someone who is a choreographer or doing costuming or a club advisor, if they're evaluated, who they're evaluated by. So I think, how are we keeping track of their time? I would like to know those, and what we can do also in that larger discussion to try and encourage our own faculty to take on
Okay.
these positions.
I mean, this strikes me as a reasonable request, and when you're ready, you can get back to us about what these procedures are. Is there a consensus of the board that you'd like to hear this?
I definitely would like to hear it.
Right.
And the piece that you brought on about the follow-up when we do have to go out of district, what are we doing? And I discussed this about a month ago. What are we doing actively to encourage the people, or if the people in-house aren't ready to take on those positions, what are we doing to help them to become ready?
Okay.
So yeah, I think it's a good inquiry. I'm looking forward to hearing that. I think I would also say that the questions about process are good, the questions about procedures are good. I want to make sure we don't go too far into looking at individual situations or cases and taking away the authority of the administration to run those things, but learning how the administration is doing it and having some oversight over that, it sounds great.
I'm not looking for any particular person. I'm looking at the process, purely process, and what protocols are in place.
Thank you. Great.
I think,
Please.
and we've discussed this a little bit in terms of supervisory experiences. I think depending on the situation, for instance, are you hiring somebody to supervise an elementary school concert? Or are you hiring somebody to supervise a varsity football game? I think that there are situations that, as much as you want to spread your supervisor experiences out across your staff, there are certain people that are much more appropriate, that would provide much more safety for the welfare of the kids in some situations that we ought to be cognizant of.
I'm not really focusing on that. I'm focusing on like the people who get a stipend, who are appointed to, let's say, do the choreography for a school play, or be the coach of a particular team, because we have some coaches.
Coaches are supervised, evaluated yearly.
So, but I think, so again, but the process and how you weigh an internal candidate versus.
Right, and it should be
external,
consistent.
and how you build for the future.
I would
Yes?
like the answers to all these questions as well.
Okay.
So, good question.
Who else has new business?
Let me give a short CASA report, even though I missed the last meeting. We are in the midst of doing our second round of strategic planning. We're working with the National Guard to do this. This is a necessary step in receiving any drug funding, which is available. There's a conference available. I would like to offer that information, Peter, for you to consider, Risa, possibly going to that.
Sure.
It's a grant writing opportunity, really walking through the steps, so you're almost guaranteed to get that money. It's in a 5-year, twice renewable, $125,000 per year. So we're in the process of doing strategic planning so we can be in a position to apply for that money.
Right. That's great. I had that in my former district.
I'm sorry?
We had that in my former district.
It just allows you to do
Absolutely.
100 other things.
That's terrific, thank you. I have a small piece. We received some communications about NYSET and some other groups signing on to a suit with regard to DACA and attempting to have an injunction to prevent deportation of those students. Did you guys get a chance to read that? And is that something you would like to discuss in the future? Dave is at least nodding, so I'm going to call on him.
The answer is yes. I don't want to even ask the question is this relevant to our district on a specific level? Because I don't want to invite scrutiny. So I'm not sure the best way to do that delicately is because we're at a very delicate time. So I'd like to talk about it and hear about it, but I'd like to know the relevance to our district in some way without potentially imperiling students who may be living on the borderline of a shadow.
That seems very fair. And there wasn't a vast amount of information in what we got. Trustees, do you want to see that discussed further?
Sure.
What's involved, what it looks like? Is there any other new business?
Motion.
I was going to say, I'm left with no choice but to ask for a motion for
Motion.
adjournment. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Thank you for your time and your service. Thank you for coming tonight.